advance of high tech in medicine and in brain research. We'll unearth the human past around the world. Then we'll have some fun. After all, it's a party. I love it. Science! I'm Alda. Join me now for Frontiers Decade.
Brought to you by a company that moves the most precious cargo of all. Ideas. GTE, proud corporate sponsor of Scientific American Frontiers. GTE, people moving ideas.
Scientific American Frontiers has been on the air for 10 years now. Over 200 stories about scientific research on subjects ranging from the deepest recesses of our brains to the farthest reaches of the universe. Of course, there's no way that our 200 stories could stand for all of science. Science is now enormous. Of all the scientists who ever lived, more than 95% of them are alive today. Tonight, as we look back over our stories, we think we can see here and there a trend that's moving. Maybe even a single thought pulls it all together. And that's the sheer power of science to take a simple question and in answering it, reveal unexpected worlds within worlds. For example, a young biologist heard rainforest bees buzzing whenever they return to the nest. Why do they buzz, he wondered? It's a simple question. After a series of experiments, he managed to decipher a buzz code that the bees used to direct other bees precisely to the best flowers in the forest. Bee sentences, he calls them. That revelation leads on to many other places that are fascinating. In animal communication, animal intelligence, and evolution. All right, hold on to your seats. This is going to be a lightning-quick trip back through the Frontiers Decade of Science. If you blink, you're liable to miss a new life form or something. Ancient life forms, but new to science, were in fact discovered in Yellowstone's boiling and hazardous volcanic pools by microbiologists Norman Pace and Sue Barnes.
It's not fatal. It's okay.
Each one of them. The DNA of the life forms, called Archaea, is very primitive, suggesting life on Earth began in hot volcanic conditions. It was a surprise to find life in hot places, and a surprise to find life in deep, dark, cold places. So we're just traveling through space here. Looks like we're in the life. Oh, brilliant. So these are great, big, brown-colored Medusae. That's gorgeous. Many of these creatures discovered off California in the Monterey Canyon were also unknown to science. They live in the vast, unexplored middle depths of the ocean, below about the half-mile mark. Science also revealed nature's fantastic versatility in other extreme environments.
This fellow's heart, it will beat about 5 to 10 beats per minute. The breathing rate drops to 10 to 15 breaths in a row, and then an hour with no breathing.
Alaskan ground squirrels unfreeze every few hours in winter, while Canadian wood frogs stay frozen. In spring, their first heartbeats direct blood just to the waking brain. We learn new things about animal communication when a baby killer whale named Orchid was born at SeaWorld in San Diego. When Orchid's mother died, the baby was adopted by another female named Kasatka. Killer whale families have different calls, but Orchid switched to her adopted mother's calls. She showed she could learn something new. feeding off parasitic wasps. The question was, how do ant and caterpillar find each other among the billions of leaves of the forest? It turned out the caterpillars use sound produced by tiny vibrating spines, which resonate as they knock against the rough skin of the caterpillar's head. Phil DeVries discovered the spines and recorded the delicate calls they broadcast to the forest.
Now, these are stingless bees.
Yeah, these are the user-friendly bees.
This is what it looks like inside his normal hive. In Panama, I made my contribution to animal communication research.
They have little numbers on them.
78. Now a number to bee. Number 78 is my bee. And this bee makes a great scientific discovery. And we all go to Sweden to get the prize. Number 78 is mine. Listen to the buzzes. It's a code the scientists deciphered by attracting foraging bees to particular places in the forest. The buzz code is how the rest of the hive learn where to find the food. At the same institute, we joined one of the world's top bat experts who works out how bats use sound both to locate prey like fish or insects and to get around in the dark forest.
I hear a naked-backed bat, then I hear Stachypteryx ballineata, the white-lined bat. In the background, I hear a free-tailed bat. So it's a whole symphony of bat calls that surround us right now.
The aye from Madagascar also uses sound to find its food. It simply homes in on every hollow sound in the wood, even though there may be no grubs inside, as in this experiment. We looked at some wonderful work on flight. One extraordinary experiment observed a single fruit fly as it responded to changing surroundings. You could see that the fly tracks its world visually because it tries to fly up or down in sync with the moving background. You'll be glad to know they gave their subjects time to rest. In another micro-experiment, a blowfly's muscle pulses are detected as it aims toward a moving target. Tiny counterweights that the fly uses for flight control were visible. In George Ruppel's classic studies of dragonfly flight, he's shown that their double wings, independently controlled, give them their terrific agility. Most of the time, spiders gave us a good scary time on Frontiers this decade.
Looks like she's coming down the road now. She senses the camera's a possible intruder, and she's coming to defend herself.
Our camera stalks tarantulas in the Ecuador jungle, while I scared myself just imagining spiders in Arizona.
It's something in here. Watch out, there's stuff in there.
Crickets have their own problems with spiders, but scientists are endlessly fascinated as we discovered. One study solved the problem of the mysterious zigzag decorations on the garden spider's web. Unlike the rest of the web, the zigzags shine brightly in ultraviolet light. So to flying insects, they look like flowers, just the right place to land.
Hello, spider.
Yes, not the air, it's the sound. Hey! This is the first time I've been able to scare a spider. I got back at spiders in Denmark, where Fritz Vollrath has worked out basic web building rules and then transferred them to a cyber spider, which now builds webs inside a computer. Ingenious high-tech methods were also used here, when female jumping spiders were shown video mates with different features to sort out what they preferred. It turns out they liked the gray males with some hair. Then we followed the relentless Portia spider as she crept across her victim's web. gently plucking it in imitation of falling leaves to mask her approach.
Like so. Raised up high, like that, higher and higher. Held it way up high. Then he would jump.
The decade brought great revelations in animal intelligence. One surprise was that octopuses can learn from each other by observation, by watching how to open a glass jar, for example. Here's the student watching an experienced octopus. Now, here's the student having seen it only once, succeeding in the task immediately. Look, you got it open, and he was never able to do this before. Just as unexpected was the creativity shown by young ravens when first confronted by an unfamiliar challenge.
What color? Yellow, that's right.
The multiple skills shown by Alex the parrot were simply startling
Good.
to our audience and scientists alike.
What matter four-corner blue?
The question means, what is the four-cornered blue object made of?
Rock.
It was a brand new question for Alex when we filmed this.
What matter four-corner blue? Wood, that's right.
All right, give me a kiss. Give me Rio the sea lion showed us in another way that animals can think abstractly. He's able to sort abstract symbols, to us they're letters or numbers, into two groups and tell one from the other. Work with chimpanzees confirmed how highly social animals can be, and how, just like humans, baby chimps have to learn how to behave. France de Waal, in particular, has spent years dissecting relationships and personalities within natural chimp groups. Take sharing, for example. It's normal to share in the group, but some chimps, like Georgie here, can't handle it.
You think Georgia is stingy because she hasn't learned to share yet, or she's just naturally stingy?
Well, in human terms, you would almost say that she doesn't have the confidence yet and the position yet to be generous with others. She's still very much in sort of competitive mode, like how much can I get myself?
We checked in several times over the years with Sally Boyson, who gently probes the chimpanzee mind. That was 3 peaches in the first box. She with the chimp counts 3 more.
How many peaches? Yes, 6 is a great answer. Good girl.
Here are Sally and Sheba 3 years later.
That was cute.
Human kids can't manage this test of symbolic thinking until age 3.
Find the real one. Hurry, hurry. See if you can find it.
But to Sheba, it's child's play. Let's say you can get a machine to give every indication that it's feeling stuff. So what? How will that change the world?
I'm interested in understanding what it is about us which makes us human. This is my attempt at trying to break down what it is that makes us human into simpler components to therefore understand.
Our next segment is about medicine. I love discussing medical problems at dinner. During our decade, two important and contrasting trends became clear. In the first, we've seen computers and high-tech methods really take hold in almost every branch of medicine. We now routinely image and map the body with unprecedented accuracy, for example. And I don't think there's a lab I visited that hasn't made some kind of computer analysis a crucial part of its work. The second trend is ominous. Disease organisms are fighting back, developing resistance to once reliable therapies. As we saw in stories on TB and malaria, this is an extremely serious worldwide threat. So there was a lot of action in medicine. Let's take a look. In a recent story on high-tech medicine, I was in the operating room as Linda Toll had a large tumor removed from her brain, a tumor that some doctors had judged to be inaccessible. A 3D computer graphic image was superimposed on Linda's brain to guide the surgery.
I'm pretty happy with that in terms of the resection. I think now it's just a matter of making sure everything's nice and dry. We're essentially done.
Sophisticated image processing was also behind this prototype aid for the partially sighted that Leonard Parrott tested with his grandson helping out. The program's long-term goal was to continuously track an eye's defect and then have a wearable computer literally fill in the blank. We saw the same idea using high-tech to compensate for problems as we continued to follow the story of Kara, a vibrant young victim of cerebral palsy. Here, infrared lasers surreptitiously track Kara's eye so she can select messages on the screen simply by looking at them.
It's great to see you again.
What a nice reception. How you there? It's great to see you again.
In this extraordinary research program, computer control of muscles through implanted electrodes brought paralyzed limbs back to life. Right now, it's a crude simulation of natural nerves, but it enabled Dan to stand on his own for the first time. In one high-tech operating room, the patient was a dummy with pig's intestines dyed bright red. Being developed as a way to rapidly apply the best care on the battlefield, it's a prototype for remote surgery in which doctor and patient are in different places, linked only electronically. In Russia, surgeons displayed a special alloy for the wire supports called stents, commonly used to keep clogged arteries open. The collapsed stent is easy to insert with a catheter, into a leg artery in this case. Then the alloy springs into shape as it warms up, opening the artery and allowing blood to flow. Our cameras filmed an important milestone in the treatment of heart disease when an implantable pump was placed alongside a failing heart. Mike Dorsey demonstrated how he carried the pump's batteries.
I'm ready for trim.
After 7 months, Mike got a heart transplant, and the program has been a key step toward the eventual goal of permanent artificial hearts.
What is this?
This is cartilage. It's a scaffold. You see the nose?
Well, it may have looked gross to me, but that nose represents a big part of medicine's future. Spare parts grown to order in the lab, like these heart muscle cells, alive and beating. This is the next revolution in medicine in the making. This story was about another potential revolution, gene therapy. Lillian Cooper took part in a trial which inserted into her leg the genes for blood vessels to see if she could actually grow new ones, bypassing a blocked artery. This trial was an unprecedented success, companies are now systematically screening those remedies for useful compounds. Traditional medicine is used by most people in the world. Wild raw materials are getting scarce. In a South African township, I visited a traditional healer who has had to start growing his own rather mysterious supplies. What is this? You eat this?
In English, I don't know how to call it.
I've never seen anything like
It's poisonous.
It's poison. Thank you. I'm sorry I picked it up.
No,
I had to put my hand on it. I'll never.
When you eat it,
Oh, yeah.
not this.
Not the skin, huh? You sure about that?
Sure.
Otherwise, you might have to give me another plant to get rid of that.
Get rid of it, yeah.
Well, what does this do? And why would you sell a poison plant?
Well, it's for those who knows how to control it.
What does it do for you? If you take the just right amount. An enema. Oh, great. I'm glad I met this one. In the forests of the Pacific Northwest, Taxol was discovered. We showed some of the first trials of this promising new cancer drug. Taxol was found in the bark of scarce yew trees, so the aim was to synthesize the drug starting with yew needles. The trials and the synthesis were successful, and now Taxol is an important weapon against many different cancers. We showed Chinese medicine's direct influence on the West in a story on therapeutic touch, in which practitioners claim to manipulate the patient's so-called energy field. Then, in an exclusive report, we showed how 11-year-old Emily Rosa proved that the practitioners could not detect the energy field they claimed existed. Emily used a rigorous experimental design.
I got 4.1 for an average of correct guesses. 5 is chance and they got below chance.
Emily's paper on the experiment ended up in a peer-reviewed medical journal. Eating much less was one story in an episode about living longer that ended our medical decade. Low-calorie, high-nutrition diets seem to be one way to extend life. Results of monkey studies, still in progress, are pointing in that direction. Then we saw mice with cells genetically engineered to age more rapidly than normal, opening up ways to possibly slow the process in humans. And we saw tiny nematode worms with genetic mutations induced in the lab, which multiply the worm's lifespan up to 4 times. Oh my God, that really is.
This is a mutant worm. This is the
striking.
exact
This is the
same
same
age.
age.
It's the same age. I'm not kidding. Isn't that amazing?
It is.
It's like, I mean, it's just unbelievable. You change one gene, and you essentially cure this disease of aging.
Extended human lifespans really are around the corner. And that seemed a pretty good idea to me. It's very good. Although very low-cal diets didn't look so easy.
And this wouldn't be bad for dessert, or am I denied dessert now?
No, that would be fine, sure. An apple is good dessert.
Yeah, you would, your heart would sink if I took out the frozen yogurt for a minute.
Well, no, yours would.
Some of our most fascinating stories on frontiers have been about the past. Increasingly, in recent years, history and archaeology have benefited from the use of scientific methods like DNA analysis, accurate dating techniques, remote sensing. And experimental archaeology is getting to be a big thing. Why not make the boat or the machine the way they made it then and see how it actually worked? But you know, there's something different about this field. It does seem to attract more than its fair share of people who are really passionate about what they do. Maybe you have to be that way to put up with the often rotten conditions and out-of-the-way places. Or maybe it's just a subject. It's exciting to dig in the sand and reveal our own past. During the decade, human origins in Africa continued to be teased out. Our cameras witnessed one team uncovering the first piece of an archaic human skull, 300,000 years old.
That's good. Hopefully, eventually, a lot of little pieces will be able to put it back together. But it's a fantastic find.
This hilltop excavation revealed a rich native African past, which suddenly, with the end of apartheid, it was all right to study. It was the first royal burial found in the region. The king and queen were probably ancestors of the present king of Venda, who invited me to join in the celebration dance. In northwest China, after protracted negotiations,
Let's go aboard, Pop.
In Denmark, I experienced one of the best examples of a new trend, experimental archaeology. These exact replicas of Viking warships were based on wrecks excavated from the bottom of the fjord. Their superb sailing quality showed why the Vikings ruled the waves around the 9th century. In Italy, we saw how they're trying to avoid a wreck of historic proportions. There's an elaborate rescue plan that works, but as a first step, steel bands now hold the leaning tower together at the point of maximum stress.
They are embracing it to the extent of all the strength, and they are ready to contain the risk of local explosion of materials.
Embracing the structure, focus, explode. Here in America, experimental archaeology returned the gift to Native Americans. It's a Vidarka, the traditional Aleut boat. They were all gone, but a reconstructed model based on old drawings and memories was tried out in rough ocean seas. The mysterious double bow, combined with a flexible frame, gave speed and buoyancy in the waves.
Feels real nice in rough water. Feels like it was made for rough water.
They were perfect hunting boats for these conditions. Finally, we showed how modern methods help clear up a lingering mystery from Custer's last stand. The problem was to identify an unknown soldier from his remains. Using video technology, historians were able to successfully match the skull to a specific 19th century army photograph. This has been a decade that at least one group of scientists would rather not have witnessed. They're the people who study the wild places of the earth, the coral reefs, the forests, the deserts, and mountains, which are home to an enormous and still uncounted diversity of creatures. Of course, we all know that those places are coming under increasing pressure from us, from humans. But as we've reported, in many parts of the world, a few humans are trying to do something about it. In 1989, Hurricane Hugo slammed into South Carolina. It destroyed almost every nest site of the rare red-cockaded woodpecker, which nests only in mature pines. There was an emergency program to make artificial sites for the 700 birds left alive. It was a classic demonstration of how vulnerable species become once human pressure has hemmed them in. In St. John, I saw some of the coral diseases that are appearing with increasing frequency around the world. These white patches are one symptom. I see the white stuff down there. What am I looking at?
We lost everything except our bones, so we wouldn't have any flesh.
An inspired piece of scientific detective work traced the dieback of coral sea fans to a soil fungus blown across the Atlantic from newly created African farmland. The sea fans were depressing, but the science was wonderful.
I love it. Science.
In the booming resort town of England on the Red Sea, our story showed how direct wear and tear from thousands of tourists' feet is destroying the shallow reef. But to compensate, just down the coast, biologists have submerged large steel frames as the basis for artificial reefs. The first colonies of marine life have moved in. In Newfoundland, the sad spectacle of a rare humpback whale that had died trapped in a fishing net was tempered by the dedication of the biologists.
Oh, geez, watch out for falling. Oh.
Well, I think for scientists, it's just amazing how this huge animal works. We only understand it very poorly, and it's a rare privilege to be able to get inside of it.
John Lee, one of the world's leading whale rescue experts, has released hundreds of trapped whales in these dangerous, near-freezing waters at considerable personal risk.
captivity anywhere in the world?
She is the only bad kid. Captivity in the world. Yes, that's true.
Okay, wait a minute. Don't go away. Wait, I got it here. Here.
It's touch and go now for these animals, although species can be brought back from the brink, as has happened with the great buster. Its grassland habitat has given way to farmland. But once again, a campaign run by a few dedicated enthusiasts has made all the difference. With young birds now regularly released back into the wild. You grab them by the wings and then you grab them by the neck.
If it goes to the fences or not, standing more or less, then it's good.
I'm discussing how to catch a stork with another of those enthusiasts.
If it's flying against you, the rest of the take it as you
You'll notice how I stayed out of that one. Storks have big beaks. But there's a serious problem with Europe's storks. Many become exhausted on their migration south to Africa because intensive farming in Europe has reduced the frogs and mice they eat. A few people run this rescue station along the way, but it's not a long-term solution. It was remarkable to see people everywhere waking up to the fact that so much wildlife, like Europe's brown bears, must be conserved before it's too late. Brown bears, once common, are now confined to a few mountain strongholds. There's a captive breeding program here, but inbreeding's a danger, so genetic analysis is essential to these chamois mountain goats to form the nucleus of a new herd to avoid the kind of vulnerability that almost wiped out South Carolina's woodpeckers. Occasionally, one of these nervous animals doesn't make it, but biologists believe it's a price worth paying for future security. Our story on white rhino showed how intensive management of endangered species really can work. There were once 50 white rhinos left, all in this park. Now there are 2,000 here, and 5,000 more worldwide. They're out of danger. In many places, we found a new understanding of the needs of entire habitats. Fire is essential in many ecosystems, to promote seed germination, for example. So more and more ecologists were starting fires. In this project, simulated lightning strikes were just the start.
What you'll be doing is simulating a cow stomach. Maybe a buffalo stomach.
It takes buffalo and fire for some prairie plants to germinate. Our cameras were here 9 years ago, and now there are just 10 precious acres of prairie restored to original condition. An artificial prairie dog town was the setting for one of America's best-known restoration projects. Prairie dogs are brought in so that the young black-footed ferrets bred here can learn to hunt under the biologist's watchful eye. Over 1,000 of the once endangered ferrets have since been released near natural prairie dog towns. Prairie dogs, once regarded as pests, are essential to the future of the ferrets. And in many stories, we found biologists eager advocates of the need to conserve the least popular wildlife. Yes, scorpions have their place, we were told, and so does everything else, even if it does attack microphones. In this story, I learned that every square mile of Arizona desert shelters over 2,000 rattlesnakes. And they just want to get away. And after rattlesnakes, the producers thought I should try sharks. Biting the boat. Not biting things that aren't
That's the great thing about science. It's a world that's discovered.
Does it make any difference if you rub it up? Does that help quiet down? it seems inexplicable, it makes sense because the female can only adequately feed one. In the future, are we going to be able to protect places like this from the powerful human pressures that take their toll in so many other places? The 1990s was the official decade of the brain. And on Frontiers, we did a lot of stories on brain research, on sleep, on memory, language, phobias, how babies and kids think and learn. We're still a long way from being able to say how the brain works in a comprehensive way. But what has emerged is a new appreciation for how tremendously complex the brain is, while at the same time being flexible and changeable. It doesn't seem to be like a computer program in there the way we once thought it did. Although maybe that's because we don't understand it all yet. Here's just a sampling of what we found out when we had our heads examined during the Frontiers Decade. Asking the question, how do kids think about magic or illogical things, yielded some revealing answers. Is that high enough?
A little higher up above your head.
In one notable series of experiments, babies under 1 year old were shown illogical events. Even minds this young seem to have mastered how the physical world should work, as shown by an analysis of their reactions.
What's in the box?
In contrast, kids as old as 3 can't yet recognize how their own minds work. Jacob calls them ropes, but the point is, he's now sure he always knew they were there.
What did you think was inside the box before I turned it over?
The decade saw tremendous advances in ways to look directly at the brain's activity. PET scans were used widely, revealing here, for example, lower blood flow in the language area of a dyslexic's brain. I tried out the latest of these brain examination methods, a functional MRI, in a study looking at memory and age. How was my brain?
We were admiring.
They identified an area that's active in memory with young people, but not old. Drawing 2 shapes was the task in a less high-tech, but no less revealing study. Nothing wrong with that. Normal brains can't do this because signals to the 2 hands get mixed up.
What we're saying is the fact that Alan's hemispheres are connected.
But a subject whose hemispheres had been surgically separated to treat epilepsy can draw as if he has 2 brains. We put on this piece of theater to illustrate some important research on the unreliability of memory. When later I was shown pictures of the technique, I couldn't remember what I'd really seen.
Umbrella.
No umbrella, no. I got that right. Yes, I think I remember her filing her nails, but I got that wrong. The picture is also vivid in my mind, but I think I remember her filing her nails too. I had a largely sleepless night in the sleep lab, so we could report on the study of dreams. I finally settled down at 6 in the morning.
These are really good eye movements. These are fast and they're big.
The rabbit eye movement showed I was dreaming, so of course they woke me up to take a word association test. It turns out we're really fast at associations during dreaming, suggesting that's how we make dreams in response to random signals in the brain.
No, honestly.
Receiving direct signals into the brain was how dowsers claimed they were able to find water.
Coming up on something. 342 feet deep. 26 gallons per minute.
We challenged several dowsers with scientifically based tests of their abilities, but in our limited sample at least, nothing worked out. Yet something that seemed equally far-fetched appeared to work pretty well. Using brain waves picked up right or desiring it to go to the left, and then my brain automatically produces the signals necessary in order to make it happen for me. Next, we're going to look back at the stories we did on Earth science, planetary science, and space science. It was kind of exciting. Our film crew landed on a brand new volcanic island here on Earth. We discussed ways to get to Mars cheap and soon. We analyzed some of the first pictures from the newly fixed up Hubble telescope. And I got to talk to a genuine spaceman. It was one very sad event in this film. Carl Sagan died in 1996 at the age of 62. He had been a tireless advocate for space and planetary exploration. A teacher, TV star, a prolific author, especially of books that interpreted science for the non-scientists. He was insistent on the importance of rational scientific thinking. And above all, he wanted us to understand our human place in the universe. Here's what he said when I visited him. And the question is, if there are planets that could possibly support life, are we alone here? I imagine you feel passionately about the answer to that.
I don't know the answer, but I do feel passionately about it.
That's a great combination. Explain that.
Well, we've not found extraterrestrial life. We're just at the very earliest stages of the beginning. We haven't found it yet. So it would be foolish for anyone to say that he or she is absolutely certain that there's life elsewhere. At the same time, we have a fairly good idea of the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. It's about 400 billion.
400 billion.
Right. So that's, roughly speaking, 100 times more than the number of people on Earth. Imagine every person had 100 stars.
And every one of those stars has an unknown number of planets.
That's just this galaxy, and there's tens or hundreds of millions of other galaxies. Put all that together, it seems laughable arrogance for humans to pretend that they're the only life and the only intelligence.
Scientists said they'd found life in this meteorite.
Now, is this your first look? That's your first look at
I can't
Mars.
believe I'm this close.
That's right.
How long ago did that get knocked off of Mars?
About 16 million years ago.
I see a dark crack.
People still don't agree if the suggestive shapes of the rock had been alive or not. We looked extensively at how humans can live in space.
Hello, Andy. It's Alan Alda. Can you hear me up there? I can hear you loud and clear. Welcome aboard, Lear. Tell me about the effect of this weightlessness on your body and what you're doing about that.
We use a regime of exercise up here. You put on a harness which has one used to simulate the load and tie us down to the treadmill.
It was the Russian space program that discovered how long-term weightlessness causes muscles and bones to waste away. Our cameras were in what was then the Soviet Union 10 years ago to film pioneering research on countermeasures. Today, the Russians still have the most experience of living in space.
Yes.
Hello, do I?
Yes.
Maybe a blindfold and a last cigarette. With trepidation, I tried out the latest space exercises.
What's going to happen to me? I don't know what this does.
In orbit, it would provide exercise while also forcing blood down into the legs, simulating gravity. It's part of NASA's program preparing for a long flight to Mars. Space exercise is one area. Another is maintaining muscle control during the landing. They put me in a centrifuge to try that out.
It's as though my arm has some magnetic force pulling it down.
Well, that's G-forces.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable feeling.
We also checked in with volunteers sealed in a chamber for 3 months to test recycling systems that could be used in space. The water just went round and round.
Let me see you drink a glass of water, if you don't mind.
And the bread was made from wheat that grew with CO2 that the volunteers breathed out. In our story on Travel to Mars, Bob Zorbert explained his scheme to produce fuel on Mars itself for the return journey. is made from the Martian atmosphere in a machine like this.
This is a general-purpose Martian still. It makes oxygen, water, methane, methanol, kerosene, ethylene, anything you want.
Blast off. Oh, look at that. Whoa! Bob's fuel seemed to work pretty well in the test room. All right, okay, so now are we in orbit now? Is that it? Bob wants to go to Mars to look for life. But some people believe a film like this proves that alien life has already found us. We made our own alien film in a Hollywood special effects house to show how easy it is to be fooled. We also explored the universe's history back in time with the aid of the sharp pictures that the fully repaired Hubble telescope was able to produce in 1993. The pictures showed galaxies so distant that they revealed processes going on 4 billion years ago. Galaxies were crashing together, merging into the kinds of galaxies we see today. We're still living with the heat left over from the formation of our solar system, and it causes volcanoes. In our story on Vesuvius, we showed how the next eruption threatens residential areas and highways. A dramatic computer simulation modeled pyroclastic flow, as it's called, sweeping down the volcano's slopes. Unless, that is, this barrier system is built. Montserrat in the Caribbean showed graphically how destructive the hot gas and rocks in pyroclastic flow can be. Whole towns were destroyed and left abandoned. Our cameras accompanied volcano scientists when they went in after a new eruption. The long-term aim was to be able to predict the volcano's behavior. Then in our story about Surtsey, we were reminded how creative pirates' activity can be. The island south of Iceland was formed in 1963, and one scientist has been watching it since his first visit in 1965. Seeds soon arrived on Surtsey he found attached to floating fish egg cases, for example. Within a few years, there was a new piece of living earth. Well, it's been an exciting decade for science and a fascinating 10 years for frontiers. We'll be back next season to begin a new decade of stories. Hope to see you then. Don't go away. Trinidad's champion steel band, the Renegades, is going to push us out. Come visit us at PBS Online. Scientific American Frontiers can be found on the World Wide Web at pbs.org or America Online, keyword PBS.
Brought to you by a company that moves the most precious cargo of all. Ideas. GTE, proud corporate sponsor of Scientific American Frontiers. GTE, people moving ideas.
to Scientific American Frontiers, 70 Coolidge Hill Road, Watertown, Massachusetts 02472. Be sure to specify which episode you'd like.
This